through navigating your transition from grid reports to dashboards. But before we get into the content, I just wanted to take care of a little housekeeping. Everyone on the phone is on mute, so if you've got questions that you have, as we're going through our content, feel free to post those questions in the question box on the GoToWebinar meeting panel, and we will see those. But as well as questions, if you've got any other comments that you wanted to make about the content that we're talking about, or if you've got a great example of a pain point that you've seen relative to what we're talking about, definitely feed us that information during the presentation, and then we'll leave a few minutes at the end for us to address some of those questions, as well as bring up any of the pain points that others have felt that might be worthwhile sharing with the entire group here. And if we run out of time and don't have an opportunity to answer all the questions, you can be sure that we will follow back up with you after the webinar to be able to provide you answers to those questions. Additionally, we will be sending out an email afterward that has a link to the webinar that you can review at your leisure. Additionally, we'll be sending out a PDF of the deck. So no need to take a bunch of screen captures as we're going. We will save you that pain and actually feed that to you after the webinar is complete. One last note I wanted to make. We have someone on the phone from Boston, and so from SmartBridge, we just wanted to say that our thoughts and prayers are with you guys out there in Boston dealing with the tragedy yesterday. I can't even imagine what it would have been like to be there, much less have it in my neighborhood. So our thoughts are with you guys. So with that, let me hand it over to Ryan Campanile, and he'll take us through the agenda.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you all for attending today. I wanted to start off a little bit by giving you guys a little bit of background about how we came up with our webinar topic today. So with several of our customers and clients recently, we've seen a common theme where we've had several of them trying to transition to dashboards or dynamic style reporting, and there's been some resistance both up front and some challenges while executing those projects. And so we've seen it enough lately in our discussions that we thought it was a good topic for our webinar series, and so that's how we got here today. So to quickly go through the agenda with you, first we're going to start with why transition to dashboards in the first place. What is the value there, and why should you do it? Secondly, why haven't you transitioned already? And this is going to really speak to some of those hurdles and resistance that we've been seeing lately in those discussions that we've been having with our clients. Next, we'll talk a little bit about overcoming those hurdles. So in some cases, we've seen some things that basically there's not a one answer to overcoming the hurdles, but there's some things we've seen that help people succeed more than others, and we want to cover those a little bit. And so, given those, and once you to the point where you do have an approved dashboard initiative, you have a charter, you're ready to get started. It's of course important to not stumble out of the gates and execute successfully. So the second part here will focus really on some of the dashboard projects we've executed and some of the challenges we've seen when executing a dashboard project. Specifically, dashboard projects where you're transitioning a department or your enterprise really to dynamic style or dashboard type reporting. And then lastly, in some of those projects as well, we'll go through some of the lessons learned that help overcome those challenges that we're seeing. So let's start with what is a dashboard. Most of you on the call here will know what a dashboard is. There's many definitions, but generally it's the visualization of information that's used to achieve an objective or to make a decision, and it usually fits on a single screen. It can be monitored at a glance, and I always think about it, and to me it's something I'm constantly thinking about from the design side. Is that it should be just like the dashboard in your car, right? You should be able to look at a dashboard and be able to get the information and digest it in a matter of seconds. If that's not the case, then it's probably not going to be effective. So now why use dashboards? What's the value there? Well, the short answer to this is that they have the potential to fundamentally change how your business operates. They can drive business performance, right? The longer answer, or the how, is we like to call it that, the way we look at it is that dashboards can help enable an intuitive analytical workflow. And that analytical workflow can help your users make decisions faster, act faster, and get to business outcomes faster. And so how does that happen? And that's sort of what's depicted here, is that, as you all know, we all have various sources of data coming in from our various business processes, systems, etc. And we take that data and we manipulate it, and we come up with some information that's generally presented to our users or part of some process. You take that information and then you apply some sort of interpretation to it, and you have an insight. And then you take those insights and you apply some action to them, or they're part of some process, and then you get your outcome, right? And so how do dashboards make this better? Well, dashboards, one, they can help accelerate the absorption of those insights. Secondly, they structure the process for identifying the opportunities and exceptions. And really, that gets back to that analytical workflow, right? By having an analytical workflow, you're putting structure around the process, and the person is able to get to that outcome quicker. Lastly, they provide valuable context for decisions. And I don't know about you guys, but it seems like every publication I pick up lately, and I'm not talking about just in our IT world, but really in mainstream media, all I see is big data, right? There's this proliferation of big data. It's going to change everything, and the sources of data are only getting larger. And really that plays in here, because what are those sources of data that people are talking about, right? They're talking about external data that's being brought in. They're talking about customer data, sentiment data. All this data that's being brought in that's further adding context to our processes and our operations. Well, dashboards play into that, because they're going to provide a way to, as that information increases, we can still present that information and give context in a way that it can still be consumed and digested very efficiently and very quickly. So the flip side of that question is, what's wrong with dashboards, right? And the real answer to that, what's wrong with grid reports? And the real answer to that is there's nothing wrong with grid reports. In SmartBridge's own organization, we use some grid reports, and there's cases where they are used and they are helpful. But dashboards can provide a better way, depending on the process, depending on the context. And so, just to give a couple of examples, of course, a dashboard can help you visualize a trend better than a grid report can. A dashboard can help signal problem areas, either via colors and highlighting icons, etc. Also, a dashboard can help you very easily compare results to either benchmarks or targets or plan data, and more and more, as I said, also with big data, more and more there's other external factors that are coming into play there that we're comparing to. And all of those things are things that are much more easily done via a visualization in the dashboard than it can be in a grid report. Also, of course, highlighting exceptions, good and bad. Areas where there are opportunities for improvement, as also areas that we're doing well and we want to mimic or follow further. And then lastly, again, of course, this is a common theme for us, is the dashboards will enable that analytical workflow better than a grid report or a set of grid reports can. So why haven't you transitioned? So we've seen generally there's a lot of reasons, and sometimes it's multiple, and sometimes it's complex, sometimes it's cultural, political. But we see a couple of common ones that we want to review here. One is that typically there can be some users that are executing, let's say, a process, and they've been doing it with a certain set of reports for a long time, and they think, why mess up a good thing? I'm doing my job just fine with these reports. Part of the issue there also might be unaware of the value that a dashboard can bring in enhancing or changing that process. Another problem can be that the process itself, the decision process, is fuzzy. I actually had an example of this recently with a client where I had worked with someone, and they were executing the same process and using the same reports for over 23 years. And so, needless to say, it was tricky to try to make this transition, because it was actually hard to even quantify what the decision process was that this user was using to get to their outcomes. So that can be another problem, is that if it's not defined, that process and how the decision process works, then how can you develop a dashboard that will help make it more efficient or make you get to an outcome faster? Another issue we see is that the we're not ready to tackle dashboards issue, and this generally speaks to lack of resources. Sometimes it's the users or business feel like they don't have the right tools or systems in place. Sometimes it's data quality issues, and not that data quality issues can hinder both all reporting, not just dashboards, but sometimes people feel like, well, our data quality issues are such that we are not going to get the incremental value we need from dashboards. Also, and this one speaks to one I talked about previously too, is the business process maturity. If there's a lack of definition, clarity, or maturity around the business processes, it's hard to define a dashboard that will help improve that. And then lastly, of course, this is very common when trying to get the project funded, is what's the ROI here? What's the value of this project? So you have to be able to solidify the business case. And sometimes also maybe there's been some previous attempts at dashboards and maybe they haven't gone great. And so there's this perception of what's the value here. So as you can see, these are some of the major challenges, and I'm sure some of you have many others, and we'd love to hear about them, because we like to try to we love a challenge and like to try to overcome them. But let's talk a little bit about some of the things that we've seen that have helped people make successful in overcoming those challenges. So the first one is to become a marketer. So I actually worked with a BI director recently who told me, and we were actually laughing about it, but it was fairly true, is that he said a huge part of my job is marketing. And he was very successful, because what happens is you have to be able to show the value of dashboards. And all too often what people might do is it's like assumed that, oh, a dashboard, it's pretty, right? It's obviously there's value there. It's better. It's prettier. It's a better way. And but that's not truly, when it comes down to business, that's not enough. And so you truly have to market. You have to. One of the things that I see is that, so for instance, there's plenty of research out there that shows the value of dashboards. There's some I've seen that even quantify taking a process and seeing increases in the bottom line related to, and driving performance related to dashboards. The problem is you take that and that's generic information. It doesn't apply to your business or your process or your operation. So to really solidify support, you have to become a marketer, and you have to take those things, take either internal exports or external and research, and you have to really apply that to, well, how is this going to apply to our particular business, our operations, our processes? And then, what goes along with that is also creating a very detailed business case that does truly get down into that understanding and where that value is. And that really is coupled and segues into the second one, which is, become the user. And this again really talks about really understanding that user and really understanding the process and how it works. It's almost like you have to become them, get inside their head, and really understand the dynamics of how you're going to change this. It truly is that. You can't look at it as just taking some reports and visualizing them. So, and some of the things we have here, of course, is to, one of the best things to do is to find a user who is, you can call them the early adopters, but someone who is eager to change or improve. And those people are out there, and they can be a champion to this. Also, someone who really is maybe methodical and analytical enough that they really know their process, they define it well. And if they don't, or maybe they're willing to with you. And by defining that, you can get down to the detail that I'm talking about of where that value lies. Lastly, of course, this doesn't apply to just a dashboard initiative. It really could apply to almost all projects. Is, start small and prove the results if you're seeing resistance. So take a particular area that's a small scope, a small process, where you see that there could be a lot of visibility, a lot of area for improvement, and just do a pilot initiative with that. And one of the key things there also is making sure that you're benchmarking the current state. So make sure you're documenting, as we talked about, that process, that operation, what that mechanism is. Make sure you're benchmarking it and understanding it, because ultimately the second part of that, which is proving the results, is you have to be able to measure it and measure that outcome after the fact. So those are some of the things that we've seen that can help you overcome that resistance, can help solidify support for your initiative as you try to make this transition to dynamic reporting and dashboard reporting. Now, once you have that initiative approved, as we said, you don't want to stumble out of the gates. You want to make sure you execute that successfully, and that's going to help you build the momentum as you evolve or progress further down that path. And with that, I'm going to transition over to Matt, who's going to talk a little bit about, once you're in and executing a dashboard project, some of those challenges that we've seen, and some of the lessons learned that we've seen from our projects too, that can help you overcome those challenges and make sure you execute successfully.
Thanks, Ryan. I wish I could say to you today that, hey, the hard part is getting approval for your project and getting it initiated and funded. But the reality is, and this isn't just true with dashboard projects, it's true with frankly any technology initiative where you're involving the business and IT. Sometimes it feels like oil and water, but with dashboards that can't work. And so there are challenges that most dashboarding projects face, and we've kind of distilled them out into 7 here that I wanted to point out and bring your attention to, if for no other reason but to keep your eyes open as you're going through your initiatives. But then also I want to spend a little time after addressing these challenges to talk about some of the lessons that we've learned through our projects and our experience that really help us overcome these challenges. So the first one, dashboards simply copy the old reports. If you take an existing grid report and you take it and 10 of its friends and put it on one dashboard, that really isn't doing dashboards justice, and you're really not doing your user justice. What we need to accomplish with a dashboarding project is, accelerate the time it takes to get from data to an action that's going to drive a business outcome. And so if you're doing that or hoping to do that with the same information you've always been using, you're going to fall short. And so what we need to be thinking about here is really to innovate how the data is being translated into those insights that will drive a person who's familiar with their business process to take that best next action. And so, the moral here is presenting the exact same information in a dashboard isn't going to accomplish what you are really setting out to achieve. Next, user requirements are constrained by current limitations. So, a lot of times you get into a project, and one of the first things, and I've been guilty of this myself, of asking a user, hey, what are your requirements? And as much as that's a well-intentioned question, the reality is that the answer that they provide, or answers they provide, are going to be constrained by what they're currently limited by. They may have provided a requirement to the previous project that developed this report, but the reality is that they were unaware of what they could or couldn't do. And so what we need to do as we look at a dashboard initiative to really reap the value and benefit that they can provide is to, I'd say, take off the shackles of what the current limitations currently are. And I would say if you can, as a BI practitioner, if you can really get to the question behind the question, to really understand what it is they're trying to accomplish and go through their business process and think about it as greenfield as possible, you really will have an opportunity to generate dashboards and visualizations that will help them more than they ever thought possible. So it's really just taking off the shackles of current limitations. Next, dashboards are cluttered and try to do everything at once. Everybody gets really excited about being able to put things on a dashboard, and dashboards can be sexy and visual and all of that. But the reality is that if you start to put too much on the screen, you're really going against everything that Ryan talked about at the beginning of why to even use dashboards. You want to provide actionable information and visibility. You want to provide context that is going to help a user make a better decision. But when you throw everything at them all at once, you've actually gone in the wrong direction, and you're actually making their job harder by creating distractions. And so, really just make sure that you're intentional about everything that you're putting on the dashboard. Next, no current state baseline established. Ryan mentioned this before. We need to measure, how well the business is now doing with the implementation of dashboards, because one, we want to get credit, not necessarily financial credit, but we want to get credit for, hey, we helped the business improve, and the business is going to be, patting our back as well. And so, you need to be able to measure where you have gotten to from where you came from. And so that current state baseline is critical to be able to not only show the success of the current engagement, but also to really tee up the potential for future projects. Solution not marketed properly internally. So Ryan talked at length about how important it is to market the initiative to even get buy-in up and down the organization. But the reality is that the marketing can't stop at that point. What we're talking about here is really priming the pump and building excitement about what is about to come. Somebody's job is about to change. The way that they handle their day-to-day activities is going to change in a good way, but you need to make sure that people's mindset and their bias is in a positive direction, that, wow, this is actually going to help me. And so marketing it internally throughout the project is going to help maximize the adoption. Now, that said, you could provide all the hype possible, and they still may fall flat. The dashboard project may still fall flat if you don't provide enough coaching to these users on their new business process. So again, we're changing how the business fundamentally operates in a good way. So we need to make sure we're providing enough coaching so that they know how to embed these dashboards into their new business process and decisioning thinking. And lastly, teams jump into the look and feel too early. And again, the nice shiny dashboard, everybody wants to talk about how it looks and how we can make it even shinier. And so the point here is, if you jump in too early, you're actually going to create a painful amount of rework later. And so with that, I wanted to jump straight into our first lesson learned relative to dashboarding projects. And it's going to seem a little counterintuitive, but number one, forget the dashboard. Focus on the desired outcome. And so I want to talk a little bit about how you can sort of wrap your brain around that. As I mentioned, a lot of dashboard teams jump straight into the visual components of a dashboard, and that's not just the IT folks, that's the business folks. Hey, I want to figure out what my new dashboard is going to look like, and so they gravitate towards designing how it's going to look. But the reality is that if you don't know what you're trying to accomplish, then how can you focus on how it's going to be delivered? So in addition to misplacing focus on how information is going to be displayed, we've seen project teams actually focus on the wrong objectives in the first place. Sort of, I guess, harkening back to the putting too much on the dashboard. Just because you can capture a metric and calculate a metric doesn't mean you should put it on the initial dashboard. It may be further down this analytical workflow, which is a collection of multiple dashboards together, but only provide what's necessary when it's important at that step in the process. Gathering user requirements sufficiently, that's a problem with any project. But again, if you're not starting in the right place here, then you're going to end in the wrong place. We've talked about designing based on what they currently have. Again, we need to unshackle our users and think about what they don't have but would be helpful for them to be able to accomplish their job better. And then a bottom-up approach. If you start with what you already have and then build from there, the end state is only going to be incrementally better, not monumentally better. And so what I want to talk about is an approach that we've used, and there's lots of approaches to handle what is the desired outcome, but this is something that we've seen, one of the tools we've used to help get at that. And it's a value tree where, on the left-hand side, you're really focusing on what is the primary objective of the organization. In this case, it's an example from a food service type of implementation. And if the goal is to increase shareholder value, what are the main areas or domains in which value can be delivered for this particular business? Is it tightening up the financial and sales performance? Is it tightening up on the cost side of things? Is it improving customer interaction and customer sentiment? Or is it about handling your staff and your talent in a better way? All of those have a path towards increasing shareholder value. And so to really get at the nuts and bolts of what that means, you move into the next level here, which are the value drivers. So if we were talking about improving the financial performance, we could either increase sales or improve margins. On the cost side of things, let's see how much better we can control food cost and labor or G&A costs. And so really you're going to the next level of detail to really unearth where the true path to that shareholder value increasing is going to come from. So if those are the drivers, then how can we actually provide a user with valuable metrics that are not going to be excessive or really not helpful, not providing context or not providing any actionable insight, but what are the right metrics that can be used to help someone understand exactly what their next move needs to be. And so if you think from a top-down approach in this type of a fashion, and there are others, balanced scorecard, economic value add, there's lots of different ways that a business can go about it, but this is a way that we've seen successful to really frame up the conversations and make sure that everybody is thinking about the right thing first, and that is, what is the desired outcome of this project in the first place? So moving into the second lesson learned, and this isn't, again, unique to dashboards, but I want to talk about some of the specific nuances relative to a dashboarding project, and that's don't tackle everything at once. You have to prioritize. So prioritization can come in a lot of ways, and it can be done in using different frameworks. What I've shown on the screen is a way to do that, and so I want to talk through the approach that we're showing here. But the prioritization of the domain, which was, if you recall from the previous slide, sort of the highest level way to get at the primary objective of the business, that can come from the top and say, hey, the board or the executive management team says, nope, we're going to focus on growing the top line, and so focus on that. Or, we really got to control our costs because it seems like relative to industry benchmarks, we're just not doing very well. And so it may come top down to say, hey, you focus on this and then go figure out how to manage that. But it could also be more organically and sort of bottoms up driven, where the department says, hey, we have dollars that we want to invest in our business to improve its performance, and so we're going to decide where the opportunities lie. So once you've identified those domains that you can reap the value from, then it's what are the ways we're going to get at that. And so we talked about the value drivers, and the chart below sort of gets into several different opportunities: increased sales, decreased labor costs, et cetera, and then how you can start to prioritize and score one particular opportunity against another. And so we're looking here not only the value that could be delivered from that particular approach, but also how quickly it could be delivered. And then the other side of it is really the availability of resources. And by resources, I'm talking about the people to do the work and to absorb what we're changing in the business, and then also the data. Is the data available for us to even achieve an improvement in this particular area? And is the data of a quality that's going to be sufficient? So, based on the weighting that your organization might apply to these and other types of attributes, you can land on, hey, this is probably our best first thing to go into. And as Ryan mentioned before, start small, improve the value. That is very true as you're scoping out the project in a dashboard project, because you may not get a second chance to do this. So you really need to solidify a successful initial project. And that also involves selecting the right audience. So who can actually take the actions that are going to make the needle move on increasing sales? And with that, how does their process change, and are they actually willing and able and have an appetite to do that? So that takes us into our third lesson learned, and that is the user experience should not be left to engineers. So I apologize in advance to any engineers we may have on the phone. I mean no disrespect, but the reality is that engineers and BI developers, they're not typically trained in all the nuances of user experience. But in a dashboard, the user experience is everything, because if people don't embed the use of these dashboards into their day-to-day job, they're not going to adopt it. They're not going to get the value out of the solution, and you're not going to achieve the return on that investment. And so it's really important, even if for a part-time resource, to get somebody who is trained in the art of user experience. And there are a lot of the same, I guess, ideas and thinking that apply to, say, an e-commerce or a web user experience, but with dashboards it is a little different as well, because we're talking about different visualizations and some of that. But applying even a part-time resource to a project to help focus on the user experience side of things is going to be critical. We've said it once, and I'll say it probably 2 or 3 more times. If done right, dashboards have the ability to drive that higher business performance, but you don't want the dashboard to get in the way of your users doing their job. And a bad dashboard can absolutely do that. And I'm not going to go into lots of detail about, what things are good within the design of a dashboard and what things are bad about the design of a dashboard. But I think if you look at some of those examples on the right-hand side, I mean, that pie chart is, well, one, it's not even all that pretty. I would have picked different colors, but I wouldn't even have picked that visualization, because you can't absorb anything out of what that particular pie chart is trying to say. And, with 3D graphs and pie charts and way too much color and too many gauges, it just, again, it becomes distracting. And so you really need to be intentional about placing the right things on your dashboard, and the user experience expert, that's what their day-to-day job is. And so that's our recommendation here on this lesson learned. So the other half of that is, similar to how an engineer isn't necessarily trained on how to handle the ins and outs of user experience, they also are likely most comfortable in their tool set. whatever BI solution you may be using in-house, and they're going to want to jump to there from the beginning. Well, I would caution against that because, especially at the beginning of a dashboarding project, what is actually thought of in somebody's head is going to change 3, 4, 5, 10, 100 times before it actually should make it into the final solution. So I would take out your proverbial back of the napkin and start to draw out some of the concepts that you're thinking about, socialize those with your users, have them do the same. The great thing about paper is you can throw it away, you can erase it, you can photocopy it, but the good news is it's cheap. And so what this is trying to make the point of is really tune the level of investment at the phase that you're in your project with the clarity of the vision of what is actually going to be delivered. So I'm calling that fidelity here, but make sure that the investment you're making is tuned to the level of detail and the spot in the process you are. Now, moving from concept to prototype, there's some great prototyping tools out there that will help you, I guess, make it feel more like a solution, but not have the full investment of a BI developer building it in their tool. But a business user could prototype something in some of these tools that we mentioned here, Balsamic, Mockflow, to really get a better feel for, okay, once this is actually built as a dashboard, is this really what I'm thinking about? And so, again, it may be a little bit more investment than jotting some things down on paper, but it's also not the full expense of a BI developer doing it in the end game tool. So that's the point here. So that takes us to our last lesson learned, and that is adoption is not a one-time event. Nurture it throughout. And so, again, that's not a unique thought relative to dashboarding projects, but I think it is extremely important in dashboards because we're changing how somebody does their job. And so there's a lot of words on this slide. I'm not going to read through them entirely. You can review them in the PDF we send afterwards. But I think the key here is, we've talked about focusing on what is being delivered and making sure that, the dashboard and the contents are relevant, that the solution is usable, and that it actually provides them the utility, the information that they would need to be able to take the best next action. But that's all really talking about the what. What we're talking about here with adoption being something you need to nurture throughout, it's really focusing on the how you're going to deliver the what. And so the how, it's a lot of your change management thought processes here, not only from a sponsorship level, but making sure that you're communicating regularly with your team internally, with the business stakeholders outside of the team, and focusing on the change management side of things, because we are going to be changing how somebody does their day-to-day job. If we do all of these things right, it's not going to be a change that they're dragging their feet about. They're going to be leaning into, well, how can you change this part of my job, because I'm not very efficient there and it takes me way too much time to assimilate this information from this report and that report, and then I have to guess on this. If everything works well, you're really helping them adopt future changes. And so the output here is you will have successful adoption if you follow not only delivering what properly, but delivering it in a way that is successful. They're going to feel engaged. They're going to feel empowered. They're going to have clarity on how they should make their decisions. And they're also going to be eager to drive more value. And if everybody in an organization is excited about delivering value to the company, then that company will be a high-performing company. And dashboards can help you get there. So those are the lessons learned that we found in projects, and definitely interested in others. If you have thoughts, feel free to drop those in the question box. But what I wanted to do is sort of wrap all of that together as sort of an overall project process. Now, requirements gathering, scope prioritization, conceptual design, on around this ring, those aren't unique steps within any project process. They're not unique to the dashboard process, rather. But what is important when you're thinking about a dashboarding project is, if you employ tools or approaches like we've described here, but do that in a way that is maybe different than your big bang type of application implementations. Really focus on those elements in the center of this slide. Start small, act fast, iterate the design, and execute with agility. So you've gotten approval for your project, make sure you scope it well, and make sure you run fast and iterate, because if you're able to move at the speed of the business, then they will want to partner with you and you with them as you tackle future initiatives. And so really with that, I wanted to hand it back over to Ryan.
Thanks, Matt. So really, we just wanted to wrap it up here with a couple of key takeaways for you guys, which is really just a recap for you. I mean, the main message we were trying to convey today is that dashboards can really change how your business performs, but you have to do it right. You can't think of it as just a pretty picture. You have to go further than that. You have to dive deep into the process, into the business itself. And the first step, of course, is getting support and buy-in. And to do that, as we discussed, you need to become a marketer. You need to understand the user. Start small and prove and measure those results. Once you have your initiative, make sure that you are focusing just how it looks, because that desired outcome is ultimately the driver, and that's going to be the value. Also, like we talked about, start small, carve out an initial pilot. That'll be your greatest chance of success, because you're not trying to tackle too much at once. Also, never forget about the user experience. At least in a lot of the projects I've been, especially in the BI and data warehousing and information management side, a lot of times it is an afterthought, but it shouldn't be that way, and you should definitely think about the user experience and getting that expertise to make sure that you're going to deliver in the best way. And the last thing, as we talked about it, when we talked about becoming a marketer, it's not just at the beginning. It's during the entire life of probably not just a project, but probably the entire life of your job as well. So and that's going to help both from the very early stages of getting the charter and initiative, all the way into getting adoption and progressing further down that road. So thank you guys for attending, and as Matt and I said, we have if you guys have questions, we'd love to hear about them. We'd also love to hear about if you've been doing some dashboard projects, or even trying to get one initiated and you have some challenges or some stories you'd like to tell. We'd love to hear them. And so thank you guys for attending.
And I will say that we didn't have any questions posted during, but we did have one comment, and it was actually from an engineer admitting that he's terrible at designing dashboards. He happens to like numbers in rows too much. And so, straight from the horse's mouth, not calling this engineer a horse, but the reality is that that's not what they're trained to do. And so let's put people in positions that have the best chance of success. So with that, we will wrap, but be on the lookout from an email from us on being able to view this webinar on demand. As well, we will send out to the attendees here a PDF version of the presentation we went through today. And I guess thank you again for your attention. Thanks for taking time out of your day. I'm happy to be able to give you back the 13 minutes in your day. But definitely be on the lookout for future invitations to further installations in our information management webinar series. So thank you for joining.